OutKick 360 is back alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Lance Lee is back as well with Jacob Swanson and the chairman of the board, David Reed. Greg Cosell will join us in an hour. Looking forward to that from NFL Films. Talk NFL Draft and much more. We have primary complaint on deck. That's in 45 minutes. But first we say good morning to you and to the guys. What's up?
You know when you come in on a day of work and you just feel like today's the day? Like this is going to be the day?
You say this so much that people are going to start not buying.
I feel like, but if I keep saying it, one day it's going to be the day, right? It's going to be the day that, you know, one of us gets fired for something, or that we have the greatest show in history, or that Lance Lee tells us all about why he missed the show to celebrate 420 yesterday. Something big is going to happen on the show today. Paul, I can feel it. This is going to be the day.
I'm energized by Lance being back.
Yeah, Lance, it's good to have Lance
Jacob
back.
plays this perfectly because he had enough difficulty without Lance to mandate Lance's return, which forestalls Lance leaving again. And we want Lance here.
I feel like we should be doing this show from a cabin in Montana, the way Paul is dressed today.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I was a little cold.
You're a little chilly,
cold
huh?
outside. I'll lose the jacket as we get going, as I get warm.
You're like a basketball coach. The jacket's eventually going to come off.
Yeah.
Then the tie. Paul's going to be in his undershirt.
I also
by
like,
hour two.
Yeah.
You guys
He's
are in the
held that
flannel.
in for an hour and a half.
You guys are in the flannel. No, I held it in for 30 seconds that we've been on air. I thought the jacket would come off whenever we go live.
I'm ready to take it off.
Did you just not know that it was still on, or you were just
No,
still
I
chilly?
knew it was on. I thought that I'd have a wardrobe change during the show, something new.
So for those,
this is the shirt that got David. This was his culmination of David. This was his number 3.
I'll be called out for this.
He went 1, 2, 3, out. And we never heard from him again.
It is chilly in Nashville, where we
in the
produce
30s.
this show. It's in the 30s.
And you've got a little girl baseball game.
Had to cover the flowers last night to
really?
make sure they didn't die. Yeah. Got to do that. And,
I don't believe in that.
Got the T-ball game tonight. It's going to be 34 degrees.
If nature intends for those flowers to die, then those flowers will die. That's my attitude.
Paul's not a big landscaping guy. This probably comes as no surprise
I don't
to
want to
anyone,
call
but
my
he doesn't
guy
really care about
and
that.
have him come out and cover the flowers.
That's not. Paul's never going to take that effort to do that.
No. I don't have anything to cover him with.
Do you respect plants, Paul? I don't think you
respect poison
plants.
ivy, poison sumac.
This is like Larry David about the wood. Do you respect wood? Larry, the guy who was mad about the rings on the wood that Larry didn't respect wood. I feel like you don't respect plants.
I mean, I don't respect them enough that I'm going out when it's cold to cover them.
Paul cannot be inconvenienced to do anything around the house. Nothing.
I mean,
he's going to stay in his lair. He's going to type. He's going to do his thing.
What'd you do last night instead of covering your plants? You did what?
I watched my team that does not score, does not hit with runners in scoring position, win anyway. And then I got this concession from Chad Withrow, who just washes his hand of his team's terrible play. He just washes his hands. This guy, like most Braves fans who are losers at their very core, he doesn't fight back or say, yeah, that's embarrassing, or boy, what a poor showing when some guy named, what's his name, Nate Jones, has a tie-breaking wild pitch and then a bases-loaded walk while the Yankees leave 7 on base. This is what he says. I say, for those of you listening, not watching, I say, these free runs are great. If only everyone let us score without hitting with guys in scoring position. And he says, I stopped watching when the Braves didn't score with the bases loaded. To which I say, quitter. I mean, can you be more of a pushover than Chad is in this situation?
Well, what inning was this when they left all the runners on base?
I think top of the 7th. I think top of the 7th. They had 1 out. Bases loaded, strikeout, then Freddie Freeman grounded out.
Pushover. Freddie Freeman, who's one of the great players of all time to hear Braves talk about it.
There are far too many entertainment options out there for me to get to and to watch.
You watch the Braves every night.
I watch an inning or 2 of the Braves.
Turn the channel off.
I watch an inning or 2 of the Braves every night. I'm no more than 3 or 4 innings. I had watched 3 or 4 innings.
But not those innings. With the tie game against the Yankees, you turn it off.
I was so bored at the lack of offense from both teams. That when the Braves didn't capitalize and score, I knew the writing was on the wall. I knew they'd screw up and lose in some way. And they did. And I was watching something else that was far more entertaining. But here's what I want to hit out now with Paul. This is where Paul always argues out of convenience. Because if I came in and made a big deal out of one game in a 162-game season, Paul's response would be, this is what all you Braves fans do. You get one game, and oh my gosh, the season's, we're a big winner now because we won one game in April. And Paul comes in and blows up one game in April.
I agree with that entirely. This is a big deal because it's me versus you. Head-to-head bet made on the show.
It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
It's a big deal head-to-head that a team that cannot score didn't have to hit to score last night. This is embarrassing Braves baseball. This isn't about one game. This is about me versus you. And you can't even watch it. You can't even put your eyes on it. It's so bad.
The Braves
That's what this is about. You had to put on a blindfold and earplug.
First off, the Yankees
Angie, turn that off. I can't watch it. I can't watch it.
First off, the Yankees were embarrassingly bad.
Abby, turn on Paw Patrol.
Abby was in bed at that point. The Braves, the Yankees were embarrassingly bad. It was a terrible game. Neither team could hit. I don't like watching
Here's what I want
baseball.
my team to do: win embarrassingly bad games. We'll
Paul,
take
I can
buddy.
just as easily go back and look. I didn't even know the score when you sent that. I just assumed the Braves had lost. I can go back on my app and say, oh, look, the Braves lost the Yankees 3-1, and I can go about my business knowing that what you always claim is nothing's won in April anyways.
Nothing's won.
Nothing is won.
But between you and I, with the bet on last night's game, something was won and something was lost. I won, you lost.
You want to make this a bigger deal
What was
than
the
it
bet?
is. We just both bet on FanDuel on our
and
team.
I lost too because Jamison Tyone only struck out 5.
I was going to ask about the strikeout.
This is what Paul would call a Braves mentality. Oh, look at my team in April. Oh, look at this. And then,
pretty big win for them.
so bad.
I'm not saying much about
By the way,
6-10.
Braves are embarrassing right now.
Braves.
Braves are terrible right now, and they still have a better record than the Yankees.
Yeah, the Yankees are terrible right now.
Yes.
And they don't hit with runners in scoring position. And last night they didn't hit with runners in scoring position.
And
they won on a hit batsman, a wild pitch and a walk by some guy named Nate Jones.
Yeah, I would. The Braves have awful injury issues right now, and they're bad to watch. And no, I wouldn't. I'm not watching that game and coming out that excited for either team. I'm sorry that I'm not. If the Braves win today, I'm not going to come here tomorrow and do backflips.
I'm not excited for either
over
team.
beating that Yankees team because they both suck right now.
For me against you, I'm excited.
Congratulations on the win, Paul. I really enjoy it.
I am really enjoying it.
Should I get a standing ovation?
You sat there and watched all 9 innings?
No, once I sat down, Simon had a game. Once I got home.
Paul, your team, congrats on your team doing a great job of accepting a wild pitch from the Braves and scoring the winning run that way. Great job.
Nate Jones, hit the mitt. Aim for the mitt. The mitt.
Great job.
Just like we were telling Simon last night. Hey, hit the mitt, buddy. Hit the mitt.
Or just aim for the field like the Yankees fans do when they don't get their way. And throw baseballs in the field like a complete embarrassment of a fan base.
I said, we talked about it on Twitter.
I didn't bring that up on air, though, so let's talk about that now.
It's reprehensible when they behave like that. Nobody says more than me, you are your fan base. When Yankee fans behave reprehensibly, I'm embarrassed by it. Because they represent me. I don't run from my fans. I know I'm one of them.
So Yankees fans suck for eternity because that
what
one
did they
incident
do?
happened, right?
Why were they doing that?
Because if Braves fans did this, you would always go back to that one moment.
I don't have the full context of it.
It was never explained why they did it.
I think they were just extraordinarily pissed off at the team's failures. I don't think there was a moment that spurred it.
They were just mad, yeah.
I think they just
They showed a lot of context. They really understand the sport that they're that mad in April.
I think they continued to not hit with runners in scoring. I honestly don't think there was a moment that.
That's amazing.
I might be wrong.
I mean, it's pretty. Look, I don't hate it. I mean, I like the accountability part of it, but man,
I mean, I saw the headlines.
He's fine with a wild pitch and a walk.
I saw the headlines.
No, I mean, I'm fine with like, what are we paying this money for? Yeah, I kind of like that, but I just find it funny because, and I'm anti this, but if a fan base does one thing one time, you will remember that, and it will stick with them forever. And that fan base is now branded
Kentucky's fan
as bad
base
by you.
doesn't burn a couch one time; it burns couches all the time.
Probably, yes, but there's other ones too. If the Braves fans did something like that,
you burn one
you'd
couch.
be going back to that all the time.
The Braves fans wear mullets all the time, not sometimes.
I acknowledge that there are good and bad in all fan bases. That's pretty standard for me.
I acknowledge that there's bad in the Kentucky fan base.
Don't bring up bad haircuts with the children.
My thing about the Kentucky fan base, who's the large representative of this, that got us into our big fan base conversation back in the day, is that I think the good fans should put the pressure on the bad fans and improve their behavior and have more control than they assert.
There is, by the way, the mullet. There is a kid with a mullet on every team now.
Oh, it's a huge
On every
faction.
team.
Major
You know,
leagues?
No. Just I'm talking about just going to a
youth
little league
baseball.
game.
Yeah, there's
I'm
always
not on
mullets.
Evy's team.
No mullets on the girls' team. They're all very nice
give 'em time.
hairstyles.
Give
Yeah,
'em
no,
time.
no mullets on that team. But Paul, it's funny that you're saying I want the good in a fan base to influence the bad of the fan base, while also you just said you are what the worst of your fan base does. You are the entire.
Well, that's why
fan
you
base.
have to go control that element of the fan base. That's your obligation. The good fans should put the pressure on the bad fans to behave better. I believe that firmly.
I believe that fans can do things to embarrass an entire fan base, but I'm never
Okay.
going to lump myself in with the worst of my fan base because it's not me. I can't control them. It's embarrassing if a Tennessee fan does something stupid or a group of fans, it does embarrass me, but I'm also not going to take responsibility for it like I did it. Because there are smart and there are dumb in every fan base.
I don't
and
go
there were
that
dumb
far.
Yankees fans that were throwing baseballs in the field, and there are plenty of smart Yankees fans also.
I agree with that, but I say, hey, those bleacher bums who characterize, who are a big part of the Yankee Stadium experience, yeah, to one degree, we're kindred spirits. We're on the same side. That's part of what I accept as being a fan of that team. And if you're a Kentucky basketball fan, those couch burners, you're a kindred spirit with them to some degree. You're not burning
Well,
couches, but those are your people.
So this is a great segue into a bigger discussion we're going to have on the Super League and the fan response and how fans can influence things, right? So to me, there's a fine line between wanting to do something and doing it. If I'm a Yankees fan and I watch that game and they don't score with the bases loaded or whatever, I'm a Braves fan and I see them 1 out, bases loaded, not score, I want to throw something, right? If I was there, I'd want to throw something on the field. But there's a big difference between wanting to do it and doing it, right? When Shiano Sunday happened, there's a big difference between wanting to go down to the football field and raise hell and actually doing it. There's a big difference between those things with the action and the inaction. And Paul, I think that is the only separation at times between smart fans and dumb fans, sane fans and crazy fans are the ones who think about it, because everybody thinks about it. And I would really like to do this, but they're not going to do it. I'm not going to throw whatever food or beer or
you paid
baseball I have
$18
onto
for.
the field, even though I want to in that moment.
Yeah, there's some level
Self-control.
of restraint. Also, alcohol has a bad influence on many of these circumstances that we're discussing.
All is right in the world with Yankees fans throwing stuff on the field and Kentucky fans burning couches.
Yep. Winning on pass balls. it's all good in Paul's world right
And
now.
a Super League being canceled before it even has a chance to be started. We discussed this and the fans' involvement behind the scenes and in front of the cameras that got things turned around and why. That's coming up. Plus primary complaint today at 11:45 Central, 12:45 Eastern. Greg Cosell debuts today as well on OutKick 360.
what's up, everybody? Really excited to finally have some in-person OutKick VIP events. We're at 6th and Peabody, Old Smoky, Yeehaw Brewery. Awesome day, great questions, good to shake everybody's hand. It's just good to be able to get out and see everybody.
We love to meet with the people that make us possible as a show, the people that tune in, the people that watch, the people that listen.
A lot of these VIPs interact with us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. And now we get a chance to come out and hang out, watch games, and interact with them the same way we would interact with the three of us on a daily basis. It's awesome.
If you're at a VIP event, you're going to hear more about the inside jokes, stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You can ask us anything. We want to be with listeners and viewers as much as possible, so we're thrilled.
Looking forward to doing a lot more of these VIP events as we continue to grow.
It's an incredible experience. I would advise everyone out there, if you're a fan of OutKick or OutKick 360, to sign up and be a VIP.
'60 across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us, and we hope you'll be with us for our next VIP event, outkick.com/VIP360 for more information. And OutKick's hitting the road. We're going to be live in Knoxville coming up this Saturday. Orange and white game is coming up Saturday, and myself, Chad Withrow, Clay Travis, we're going to be in Knoxville for an OutKick meet and greet that's taking place at Old City Sports Bar, Chad.
That's right, Old City Sports Bar, starting at noon Eastern Time on Saturday, noon to 3:30. We'll be there in advance of the orange and white game. There is some rain in the forecast in Knoxville, but they have a roof at Old City Sports Bar. We'll be inside, nice and cozy, dry, ready to go. I say dry, there will be drinks involved. But you can join us, hang out in advance of that game, and they'll have the games there on the televisions at Old City Sports Bar as well. Excited to partner with Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery and the Greenbrier Tennessee Whiskey for this event. Drink specials, food specials for OutKick VIPs, maybe even some free food and drink at this event that we'll announce coming up. But if you are in Knoxville or you're headed to Knoxville this Saturday, join us, Old City Sports Bar, starting at noon.
So keep the logo up briefly here. Paul, you were at the photo shoot where Chad and I and you, we took photos. This was early March. And at the time, we saw the photos and thought, oh, these look really nice.
Yeah.
But when you see the coloration compared to Clay's photo shoot, don't we look dead?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what Chad and I will look like in a coffin.
Corpse.
It looks like we're black and white almost, and Clay's in full color.
Well, I think this photo, to be frank, I was in the middle and made to look like Clay, and they simply subbed him in for me. So I was satisfied with it when it was me. But now, seeing you two represented so poorly with Clay there, it's disappointing. And all the graphics, and we just saw the commercial for OutKick VIP, excellently done. But I'm going to have to give this a D+ at best. A D- really would be generous. The coloration is very poor. And Hut, you look bad, but Chad looks terrible.
Yeah, I look really washed out
Sick.
in that photo. Yeah, I look like I'm green almost, like nauseous.
You're on your way to the hospital.
Yeah. So like something's gone really wrong.
Yeah, bad
right?
case,
Like I've got
bad
like
case of COVID.
clammy skin. There's some nausea, and then like
dizzy,
something's really wrong.
Dizzy, dehydrated, but not hungover.
Some sort of toxic shock. Something like
But definitely
that.
not hungover.
As
definitely not hungover.
Cameron would say, not hungover.
Well, we had, and Paul, I'll show it to you, but a listener was kind enough to add color
Freshen you up, yeah.
to our faces, and it looks a lot better. And it looked like the actual photo probably looked. It's just the way this one has been drafted. I really feel like, and maybe Clay can comment on this, that the people at OutKick are trying to make Clay look better while making us look worse.
Oh, I think so.
And this was an intentional, we're going to put Clay in the middle and give him color and make these
size.
guys look like they're dead.
Well,
Size.
I
You're
don't
the
I don't think
wingman in
there's-
this photo.
I don't think there's any intention of this. I think
I
this
do.
is exactly
I
how
don't
the
know.
photo came across, because this is the lighting. I
no,
think
no.
Clay, I would bet money that Clay's photo shoot took place at his home with different lighting, and we went to some offices in downtown Nashville and had the lighting that you see currently on the two of us. That's what I would place my money on.
I find it hard to believe this hasn't been tinkered with.
Well, Clay also will be quick to tell you he has a beach home So he was recently at the beach before that picture, and he goes year round. Where Hutton and I are
We're in that igloo.
indoors, not in the sun. Well, this again, I think this is winter months, right?
Igloo.
This is leading into spring, so we would be this white in that photo. It really caught us in time. If you take this
in
photo in
Arctic
July, we're going to look a lot
cabana.
different.
Jacob, Lance, your thoughts on the death photo? I mean, it looks like a death. You know how, like in the 1800s, they would prop the dead up for one final photo shoot.
Bring out your dead.
Before being placed to the ground. Like this, this was us. This is our death scene.
I was really hoping whoever was going to fix the color on the photo was going to just go all out on the color.
Make it
make
green.
you psychedelic colors.
Yeah. So
The night before,
Lance,
we had
go
just
ahead.
been to Jacob's band's show.
Yes.
Yeah. Lance had some
still
thoughts.
feeling the effect from Dad's acid.
Yeah.
I think on the photo shoot.
Lance, your thoughts?
Well, I'm wondering here. Let me bring this
Okay.
up here once again. If we look at Clay's right arm, which is on the left as we view it, what's going on with the inferno on the bottom of his forearm there? Have we noticed that
What
yet?
is that red coloration?
It's like a red, it's like a red trail coming from his hand.
Poison sumac.
Oh,
Interesting.
that's even further confirmation that took place in his home with his backlighting upstairs or wherever. I'm assuming it's upstairs.
Or further confirmation that this
studio.
photo was doctored to make Clay look better than us.
Certainly a
which
different
also
lighting
is a
setup.
possibility.
Different lighting for sure.
Lebowski on Twitter says, this meet and greet flyer looks like Hutton and Clay are throwing a benefit to help Chad with his liver failure.
I think that's just right.
That's actually what's going on Saturday, so that's great.
That's it, yep.
Please, help me out.
And that's going to take money away from Catfish Jake's LLS campaign,
Yes, yes.
which
That's
is
right.
unfortunate. A real campaign.
when you can really put a face to the cause, that's key, and that's what
Always
I am in
helps.
this photo
Yeah.
here.
They couldn't find a little kid.
So help me with the Super League
All right.
or the lack thereof. This is a global story for the sport of soccer, and it's not going to happen.
No, I'll boil it down. So the Champions League takes place concurrently with the league seasons of the best European leagues. And X number of teams from each of the European country leagues qualify for this. So in the EPL, the top 4 teams from the English Premier League qualify annually for next year's Champions League. So you're playing to win the Champions League, which doesn't have playoffs. You know, if you win the league, you win the championship. But you're also playing for the first 4 spots, which gets you in the Champions League. Champions League's awesome, right? It's the best teams from all of Europe that play in groups. Group play first. You have to come in the first 2 of your group to advance. Then you play a head-to-head, home and home to advance into the knockout round. Then you play knockout round through, and you're ultimately crowned the champion of Europe, which is an incredibly prestigious club title, the best club title in Europe. What these 12 teams did was say, screw the Champions League. We're going to break off, and instead of playing in the Champions League, the 12 of us plus 3 unnamed teams are going to have our own deal. We're going to play games against each other during the week, and we're going to have 5 teams that qualify. We're not saying how they're going to qualify yet. We're going to have a 20-team Super League during the week that ultimately crowns a champion, but we don't have to qualify. We're the best teams, we're the best names, we're who people want to see, and people want to see Chelsea versus Real Madrid and these sorts of games. And this was met with huge, miserable complaints by everybody. And it was so poorly timed that coaches were taking their teams out to play games, having just been informed by their management that this was happening. Players and coaches knew nothing about it. Pep Guardiola, the coach of Man City, is answering questions as his team comes off the field, only knowing a little bit about it and saying brilliantly, like, sport isn't sport if there isn't a consequence to losing. And everybody else, Leicester City, who won the Premier League 4 years ago, wouldn't qualify for the Super League might not under this new circumstance.
Are the fans of the 15 clubs involved for this?
Furious.
Why?
Furious, because traditionally you have to win your way into the Champions League. And they don't even want this automatic berth that goes against what in Europe is the relegation promotion thing, where you have to win your way into the league and then you have to play through a season and get one of those 4 spots, which creates the intrigue of the Premier League. Right? One of the big teams is probably winning the Premier League, but there's intrigue for that 4th spot, because the 4th spot goes to the Champions League. The 5th spot goes to Europa League, which is another second-level championship that's all of Europe also. People hated it on every level. And Leicester City, who's a very good team now, Leicester City, who's a very good team now that's in the top 4 in the Premier League, is out of this. They would never have a chance to be in this. We don't know how those 5 would qualify. Plus, the German teams, Bayern Munich and those teams, and Paris Saint-Germain, the best team in France, the 2 teams that met in last year's Champions League, said no. They didn't want in on this. They thought it was BS.
But
now these teams have all backed out.
They only said no after the backlash.
No. They said no before.
I thought there were 3 spots left that were assumed to be Paris Saint-Germain.
Right, but they hadn't said yes.
But they were waiting to see they didn't just flat out say no to the idea. They were waiting to see the backlash.
Well,
and then
they were pretty staunchly against, from what I've read. Paris was. And the German teams have are more bound to their fan bases. There are a couple teams that are owned by that ownership has more than 51%, but most of them have 49% ownership and a fan interest that really does kind of dictate things. So this is like if all the best teams, NCAA might work, but this is like if the SEC, if Alabama, LSU, and Florida split off to go with Ohio State and Michigan and everything, and then what does the rest of the SEC think? Like, you've deserted us, and we don't have a chance to beat you and get into the college football championship or get in and knock you off in the SEC championship game. After all this history we've had together and all of this time and all of this building our conference together, and yeah, you may be the richest and the best, but we've got a stake in this with you, and you're just turning your back, and now you don't have to win anything.
We've already seen that, though, with conference realignment in college football. And if we saw the Power 5 split off and do their own thing, there wouldn't be 0 fan uproar. They would be for it. It would be the opposite mentality.
But in this, there's such a marriage of the way it's traditionally been in the pyramid with relegation and promotion, which would have been washed away in a lot of this. And it was just hated by absolutely everybody. It's a greedy move.
You keep saying it was hated by everyone. It wasn't hated by the owners because they wanted to do it.
Well, right.
But there's a reason they wanted to do it.
But this is such a backlash. This is the UT backlash against Greg Schiano on steroids. No fan, no manager, no player came out and said, yeah, I like this idea. Let's do this. Only the owners. And they've all been squashed. Man United's director is out as a result of this, and he was an instrumental guy in this. Real Madrid's president spoke and got crushed for what he said. He was doddering, idiotic, one of these things where we say, how could the management be so blind and speak so foolishly and not be in touch at all with the pulse of the reaction to this? And in 2 days, clubs were backing out. Chelsea at the forefront, Man City. Chelsea, my team, was one of the ones that was said to they wanted in because they were afraid of missing out with the other 5 or 4 who were leading the charge out of the EPL. And they're thinking well, we've got to go if Liverpool and Man United are going. And ultimately, this whole thing came crashing down in 2 days.
I'm a little torn on this. I like that the fans were able to exert enough power to make a change that they didn't want. But it really just sounds to me like tradition versus the future. They want the like we do a lot of times. We want our sports the way they've always been. And this is a cutting-edge idea of two sides of this. The clubs that generate the most money for their respective leagues because of their power, that also took the biggest hit during the pandemic and need money. And they don't need to be distributing money to everyone in the club that's not making as much money and doesn't have the same impact as them. This was a way to pool those resources together and make more money. it's not unlike a lot of business decisions that go on across the world every day. The fans hated it because it's not what they're used to.
Well, they also hated it because Tottenham, say, and Arsenal haven't been very good for a while. And even Arsenal getting into the Champions League hasn't done anything in the Champions League for a while. And so European soccer fans are saying, like, why should you automatically be into a thing when teams that are better than you deserve to win their way in? And that's a big thing in Europe, is win your way in. Or if you win your way in and you get beat early, suffer the consequences of getting beat early. And this was set up for the teams with the names and the money to be in. And the consequences were going to be dire. UEFA, which is the head of Europe, and FIFA, the head of international soccer, were saying you're going to suffer some serious consequences, including your players aren't going to be allowed to play in the World Cup, which would have killed France, England, Germany if they ultimately went in. And guess who else? Us. Because all of our best players are playing in these leagues now, starting with,
are we qualifying?
With Christian Pulisic. Well, it wouldn't have mattered if we qualified because our guys wouldn't have been allowed to play in the qualifications, better yet.
Save us the embarrassment of not qualifying.
We've got
Please.
very good players. We're going to qualify.
I mean,
It's a fascinating story to me because of the fan influence and what happened. And you mentioned the comparison that a lot of people in the state of Tennessee were making to. I noticed the one tweet that said, man, it's just so sad that American sports fans could never rally and change the decision of powerful people to this extent. And every Tennessee person said, hello, Schiano Sunday happened, and it's all because of fan backlash that they went back on a hire they were going to make.
The Schiano thing would be so much more impactful as an overall story if they hired a successful coach as a result of not hiring Schiano, and the program was fixed and moved forward then, right? If they had a home run hire after they backed down on Schiano and the program repaired itself and went forward well, it'd be such a better story. And they didn't, unfortunately.
See, and I'm not a huge soccer guy, but I love the idea of the Super League. I like the idea of consolidating the most powerful clubs in Europe and then playing against each other every year.
But that
again,
happens every year.
I'm not the target audience because in doing that, you're offending your loyalists, your diehard soccer fans, obviously, or there wouldn't have been backlash to
But
this
it
level.
happens every year. And Ajax from Holland has won the Champions League 4 times. And they'd be shut out of this thing, odds are, or have a lot less chance of making it. So why shouldn't they have an equal chance of making it? What's wrong? You know, you've got to revise the Champions League, but still have people play into it, win your way into it.
It's just odd that, again, the mentality is a complete opposite mirrored viewpoint from that of the Power Five, where if the argument is, well, everyone should have an opportunity to win a national championship, we're not hearing any of that when we think of the Power Five teams coming together for the Super Conference.
Well, the one difference is, you know, UCF is not playing the caliber of teams, right? But Ajax in Holland is good enough to get into the Champions League and beat all of these teams, all 12 of these teams that were in the thing. They just now in a Super League might not get the chance. But they are on equal footing with those teams, as are a lot of teams that aren't in this 12 or 15 or might not be able to qualify for only the 5 spots that would be available. So it's not like there isn't a path for these teams and they don't play the quality competition along the way these Cincinnati doesn't, or whoever the team of the year is that has an undefeated schedule against inferior opponents. And in Europe, in European soccer, you may dominate your nation's league, and the question about are you good enough is answered because you qualify for the Champions League, and some of these teams go on to win it or go very deep in the competition on a seemingly pretty regular basis.
I mean, it's not totally unlike, and Hutton, you brought this up, with colleges leaving certain leagues and going to a better league to better themselves and leaving behind everyone in the league
Texas
that's
A&M.
left.
They took their money and left.
Right, and well, there's other examples of smaller leagues even that they advance a little bit and it screws the league they left, and then the other schools are left behind. Hey, well, thanks. Can you take us with you too? Because now we're hurting financially. But these are everyday business decisions that are made. When Universal buys NBC, every other cable network can sit there and say, hey, can you buy us too? Can we join this Universal conglomerate? That'd be great for our business. And they're saying, no, we don't want you. So these are rich, powerful people that own the most profitable clubs in Europe that are getting together and saying, we're going to leave everyone else behind that's not putting in their end of the bargain. They're not contributing as much money. And fans got mad about it. This is a business decision being made. And they threw a hissy fit and they stopped it because they didn't want to lose all their fans, which I get. But I just think it's interesting that, to me, this is a business arrangement. That's all it is. They're trying to do something that's going to make them more money in the end, that they thought fans, there would be blowback to it, but not to this level. And then it got stopped because fans were so angry. So then the business decision became, well, now it's a bad business decision because we're turning off our loyal
the
fans.
Fans want a soccer arrangement. And where's a lot of the blowback aimed? Well, the Glazer family owns Manchester United.
Those ugly Americans.
And the Henry family owns Liverpool. And those two teams were instrumental in this. They're bringing an American mentality, like you're talking about, to European soccer, which is a different animal and doesn't want the closed league. They want an open competition.
Coming up, primary complaint.
Yes.
And in 20 minutes, Greg Cosell of NFL Films will join us. We hope you'll follow along on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. Search out OutKick and OutKick 360. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can hit the alert button. We go live every day at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. And after the show, immediately following the show, you can find us wherever you download your podcast. Primary complaint next on OutKick 360. OutKick 360 rolls on. Greg Cosell of NFL Films with us in 15 minutes alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Gentlemen, last week's debut of Primary Complaint a success, but for those new to the show, Paul, explain the concept of Primary Complaint on a weekly basis for us.
Sports, non-sports. We look for you to file away a singular complaint, the one thing that is really bothering you, chapping your ass. Bring it here. This is catharsis. It's like a confessional. You bring it here, you put it on this table, and then you feel better. You feel better. Even I feel better. And I quickly have another primary complaint. As soon as I get this one over, I've got another one. But it feels good to leave one here. These boys, get it off my chest. And I feel better. And we want you to feel better. So we invite you to email us 360@outkick.com. Video form is wonderful, and we will use your video as part of this segment where we will let you leave it right here. Get it off your chest. But just one complaint. Don't compound it and tack a bunch of different things on. Be focused.
One complaint, your primary complaint, not a secondary complaint. It is time for Primary Complaint on OutKick 360. I am a massive fan of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones ended, regardless of what George R.R. Martin wants us to believe, who continues 10 years after his last book to act as though he's going to finish the story. The latest story from OutKick.com, George R.R. Martin says he is behind, way behind. He's been behind for years. And I'm going to say something that not every Game of Thrones fan of his work wants to hear, but they need to hear it. We don't need George Martin's ending. He allowed his vision and his story to end with other writers holding the pen for HBO. That's it. It's over. Just admit that you're not going to find the time to finish the story. George R.R. Martin, now your watch has ended. Move on to the next HBO series, please. That's my primary complaint.
I have a thought here on George. I'm not a middle name guy, as you know. I do not have a middle name. My name is Paul Kuharski. Now, I understand the importance of middle names for many people. My son was given a middle name. But two? No. And double initials I'm against. This George R.R. Now, I hate people that have a single initial and a middle name. T. Stephen. I knew a guy named T. Stephen. I hate that.
F. Scott.
But yeah, well, F. Scott, he made it work out of his fame.
Course.
He is George Raymond Richard Martin. Now, I can even handle that more, but the George R.R.
Martin.
George R.R. drives me crazy. And this pompous ass who wants to reclaim the ending of his story with dragons, and shot in the dark, apparently, from what I hear critics of the thing telling. I don't want to hear from him either, so I support your complaint, and I tack on onto your complaint, a complaint about R.R.
That was
So is that your primary?
very well done.
That's my complaint connected to your complaint.
May I complain now?
I don't know if I'm allowed to sneak in.
Let me start with a compliment. I love Chris Sims' analysis. I think he's a handsome man. I think he's a very good-looking guy, very fit guy. What I don't like is the trend in fashion that Chris Sims subscribes to. And that is this, and I'm going to show it to you now, and I'm going to tell you about it also. The buttoning the button up all the way to the top of the shirt is a ridiculous Poindexter-like look that Chris Sims insists on everything. I'm just going to show you now what I look like with this. It looks terrible. Right now, also, I kind of look like I'm in Latin Kings, the way this shirt is, and the button up all the way to the top. I can't even do it with a straight face and keep it up there. Don't button your button up all the way to the top. You need to breathe a little bit. If you're wearing a tie, that's how you wear your button-up shirt.
Tribute.
Hunt now is showing
tribute.
how you do it. Paul, I couldn't even do it longer than 5 seconds. Paul now has it buttoned all the way to the top. Don't do this. Chris Sims, good-looking guy, good football analyst, former pro quarterback. You look ridiculous when you button your shirt all the way to the top. It's a Poindexter-like move. Loosen that thing up. Let it breathe. Let the Adam's apple breathe a little bit. There's no need to go all the way to the top. This is a lesson for everyone out there. Do not button your button up all the way to the top unless you're wearing a tie underneath it. This is my primary complaint.
My primary complaint, listen, you guys know I hate meteorologists. They take themselves they take themselves far too seriously. You know what I hate more than meteorologists? Faux meteorologists. Last night, after I watched the Yankees win on a wild pitch and a walk,
Yes.
I flipped over to MLB Network. On MLB Network, the Cincinnati Reds were playing at home. I can't even remember who they're playing against. It is pouring rain, a deluge, a monsoon. I've said this time and time again. I don't know why Major League Baseball insists on letting umpires continue games in these kind of conditions. Somebody is going to die. You have to have a grip on the baseball. And you cannot grip the baseball no matter how much you're hiding it with your gloves or the umpire's wiping it off. A pitcher is going to lose a ball, he's going to hit a guy in the face, and he's going to kill him. The pitcher was, the Cincinnati pitcher gave up a go-ahead run. This was Arizona. Threw the ball back to the he's stalling. He's losing the game. He wants his team to get up in the bottom of the eighth. He's asking for a new ball like 3 times. He clearly wants them to stop the game. It's awful. Okay? They finally pull the tarps out. The game ends up suspended. They're going to finish it tonight, except it wound up snowing in Cincinnati. They go back to the studio show, and Harold Reynolds claims that because he's from Oregon, he understands rain. And he says, if it rains hard like that, it's going to stop pretty quick. If it's drizzling, it goes on for a long time. Now, Harold, I don't know how it rains in Oregon, but I've lived in lots of parts of America. And here in Nashville, just recently, it rained like hell nonstop for 2 days. So I don't know where you get this thing that if it rains hard, it's going to stop quickly. Look at this jackass in front of a weather map like he knows what the bleep he's talking about. If it rains hard, Harold, there's a scenario where it continues to rain hard for a long time. I understand you've seen Caddyshack and you're hopeful it's going to stop and you can play through. But shut up.
And the snow behind it as well. I mean, I realized that they played opening day in Detroit. Was it Detroit?
In snow.
Yeah, in snow.
But you can see the you can see the rain right over the top of Cincy.
If it rains hard, it's going to stop. That's the signal. If it's drizzling, it's going to go on.
Really funny way of saying it. Like, it's going to stop, guys. I promise. That's amazing. Well done.
And then it was good. He said, "Yeah, like I told you, it's going to stop. Let's go to Cincinnati," and then go to San Diego. And he's like really ready to tell you how. See, I told you. But there are guys warming up in the outfield in San Diego.
Well done.
Where the weather's perfect.
You can contribute to Primary Complaint. Email your video. We're asking for 60 seconds or less. 360@outkick.com. You can also use the hashtag on Twitter. You can type out your complaint. We can read those and retweet those using the hashtag Primary Complaint. Lebowski chimes in for the first viewer contribution to Primary Complaint. He sent this in to 360@outkick.com. Here's Lebowski.
Lebowski here. First off, congrats to the guys on the new show, and I'm very happy to see Primary Complaint return for obvious reasons. My beef is with the Tennessee Titans. Recently, the organization put out a call for a new stadium PA, and I applied. Weeks later, the team released a teaser video using my demo footage that I provided, among many others, in which I explained why I felt that I would be a good fit for to audition for the Titans PA. Now, sadly, I was not offered the chance to audition. I'm not pissed that I was passed over for the chance to interview. I'll leave that to the powers that be on who they want to bring into audition. That's fine. What I'm not a fan of is having an NFL organization use my likeness in a hype video for, and I quote, a fan-voted PA selection process that left me having to answer embarrassing questions to my family and friends on how they could vote for me. And then I received a rejection email a week after the first auditions started. Couth is the word I'm looking for here. And this organization and a team I have followed since they played in Vanderbilt Stadium showed me none of it. And that's my primary complaint.
Very well said by Lebowski.
I have a
very serious complaint for Lebowski.
Well, and
usually
also
he's cutting edge humor.
Lebowski's incredible, by the way, and he'll submit some more primary complaints for us as we go along. One of our all-star complainers from back in the day that will come on this show also. It is weird that it was billed as a fan vote for this, and that you could have voting, because every video I've seen with this is 3 or 4 people that are sitting there taking down notes, listening to everyone. And they're voting on it. That's not a fan vote.
No.
That's a panel of people that's picking
They'll
it.
create a fan vote element that they'll then disregard, I would hope. The fans shouldn't choose who this
Can we
person
please
is.
just state the obvious here as we get ready for Greg Cosell? The 20 finalists, of the 20, there are maybe 5 that sound like a public address announcer. For the city of Nashville and for the Tennessee Titans to produce this as an option for the public address announcer to replace Duke Donegan is embarrassing. That's stating the obvious, and that is saying what a lot of people behind the scenes are saying about this. Here's hoping they find a great voice for the stadium, because what they've produced so far with some of this is not.
Also, I've got a tweet. I haven't sent it out yet. I won't until after the show. I meant to send it last week. This is going to be a very tough decision for the judging panel, I write, because this group loves everyone. They gush about every single person. They've done 3 videos of 10. As far as I know, they have 30 candidates that they think are the greatest public address announcing candidates in the history of mankind.
Well, and here's why I say it's not that they don't have a decent voice. You can tell when someone is hearing their voice for the first time.
Right.
Because when you speak, it is a lot different to you in your head than hearing yourself on a microphone and over a PA system.
If you've never heard it
And
before, you're not qualified.
I'd say over half of the people I saw looked as though they were reading into a microphone for the first time inside of a stadium.
If you are, you're not qualified.
It's just bad.
Well, Paul, going back to your thing about you don't want the fans to decide, I get what you're saying there. Well, I don't want the organization to sell it as a fan vote and then not take the fans' word for it. That's a lie.
Never should have been a factor.
I mean, if Lebowski's being told to get it out to the fans and we're going to do a vote and doing all this, then you're not going to take the fans' vote, then that's...
Well, maybe the ending is a fan's vote or something. I don't know what they have in mind. But for the 25, like Lebowski has a great booming voice.
Yes, very deep.
And it's no slight at him for not making this top 20. I don't understand how they came up with some of
His
these
voice might be too
candidates.
There's no such thing
Yeah.
as a voice being too deep.
Just again stating some of the obvious.
It's like telling a basketball player he's too
instead
tall.
of playing along with
Too tall.
part of the being in on the joke. Coming up, Greg Cosell is no joke. He joins us weekly and debuts on the OutKick Network next. It is OutKick 360 across the OutKick network alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Pleased to be joined by Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Over 4 decades with NFL Films as a senior producer, and he joins us weekly on OutKick 360. Normally he will be every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Today we've moved back just a bit, and you're about to see why. Greg in a suit, as he did some things earlier today for a television taping. Greg, first and foremost, we are thrilled to have you back on the show and back on weekly. This is going to be a blast.
Well, guys, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. And yes, unfortunately, I don't want people to think I dressed up for you guys, because I would never do that. We actually shot my NFL matchup show, the first draft special, this morning. So just got back to my office a few minutes ago, and I said, you know what? I'm going to keep my coat and tie on for the guys.
Every Wednesday with OutKick 360, and we debut the Cosell Files, the weekly podcast across the OutKick network, which will be every Thursday afternoon, talking all things X's and O's and film analysis from the very best, Greg Cosell. Greg, let's talk draft. Let's jump right into it, and let's start with Trevor Lawrence, who is being described as a generational talent at the position. Do you agree, and is he far and away the best quarterback available?
Well, I don't think he's a generational talent, and I'm not sure what that word means. If I had to rank the quarterbacks in this draft, I would probably put him at the top, yes. But, I think the way I'd answer that question is this, guys. And I think this gets lost in a lot of the discussion, particularly at this time of year when there's 20 mock drafts every day. And, of course, all 32 of those players in the first round that are in mocks, we know they're all going to be Hall of Famers because that's the way they're presented. I would say that no quarterback, no player, but certainly a quarterback, no quarterback enters the NFL as a finished product. There are things that must be worked on. When you watch the tape carefully in detail, you see things with Trevor Lawrence that you say, hey, he needs some work in that area. And then you hope he gets that work. And sometimes you see things on tape and they're great. Sometimes you see things on tape and you say, hey, that's a little bit of a concern. And now there's so many variables. Where he goes, the scheme they run, how he's coached. There's so many variables that go into it, but no player comes into the NFL as a finished product.
What's he need the most finishing on, Greg, before I move on to Justin Fields?
I would say that Lawrence, and this has shown up in the playoff games in each of the last 2 years, Lawrence is a body thrower. He's a strider. He's not compact per se. So when he gets pressure inside, he tends to rush his mechanics, and that's when he loses his ball placement. So I'm very curious to see, once he gets to the NFL, when he faces more bodies around him, how that plays out. That's something he absolutely needs to work on. He's a big kid. He's an angular kid. He does not weigh a lot for being close to 6'6". So he's a long athlete who strides, and that can pose a problem. It doesn't automatically have to. Matt Ryan has been a really fine NFL quarterback for years and years, and he's a guy that strides. He's always been a strider. You can play the position that way, but it's just something that you look at on tape and you say, I think that probably needs to be just tweaked and cleaned up a bit.
Justin Fields is a guy who's created a lot of debate in terms of his ability to progression read and how quickly he gets to his second read. I'm curious for your take on that and how you think he compares maybe to the other first round guys in that category. Is that a fair thing to question him on, or not so much?
Well, I'd answer that this way, PK. I think you have to be careful about that when you watch tape. Look, there are clearly route concepts that everybody runs, and you know where the ball should go based on what the coverage is. But the one thing we don't know is how he's coached. And at the end of the day, that's really something that you have to be very careful about with a quarterback when you watch tape, saying that he doesn't progression read well. I would say that it's fair to say that at times he's a little too deliberate in things that he does. I think that's fair. But to start getting caught up in where he should go with the ball based on how he's coached within his scheme, I think you have to be a little careful about that. I've rewatched Fields, and believe it or not, the more I watch him, the more I like him as a prospect. Now, again, same situation. He's not finished, but you're talking about a kid that is a talented thrower. And again, you have to define what that means. Yes, he has a big arm. He has what a lot of coaches call a 65-plus yard arm. But he also showed the ability to feather and layer the ball with touch. I think he has very good throwing traits. We know he can move, but he's not necessarily a guy that just flees the pocket. There are examples on tape where if you watch, you see pressure and you go, gee, he didn't handle it well. But the question I would have there again is we don't know if he's responsible for protections or maybe the offensive center is responsible for protections. So you have to be careful about talking about that as a negative or a flaw in his game because you don't know. But I like Justin Fields, and the more I've watched him, the more I've come to believe that he'll be a really quality NFL quarterback.
So, Greg, this is one of those process questions that I love asking you about, and I'm asking specifically in regards to Zach Wilson. I watched on ESPN Kirk Herbstreit's quarterback special, which I really enjoyed, and in that special, they're showing film of Zach Wilson at BYU's Pro Day throwing against the grain, going to his left, and throwing a post that's going the opposite direction, and showing how he can contort his body and throws it on an absolute line to him in that moment. And something you've been consistent about is the number one quality of an NFL quarterback is accuracy and ability in the pocket to go through the right progression, find the right receiver, and throw it accurately. But when you see the game today, and a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, is it becoming more and more important to have the ability to have those off-platform throws like they showed in this special with Zach Wilson? And is Zach Wilson a guy that's really good at that?
Well, it's funny you say that, Chad, because, we just did my matchup show. And the first show, which airs tonight, by the way, on ESPN2, if I may do a quick, if I may be a self-promoter. We did Mac Jones and Justin Fields tonight in the first show. And in the second show, we will do the other three quarterbacks that are, talked about, obviously Wilson, Lawrence, and Trey Lance. And one of the things we talked about, because it's a function of Mac Jones, who's very polarizing, is just what you asked. And it's a philosophical question. And here's what I actually typed on my format sheet. I said, have we reached a point where if you don't have some ability to make off-script plays, are you limited to not being quite good enough to be a high-end NFL starter? And that's basically the question, Chad, I think you're asking me. And I've talked to a lot of coaches because, hey, you guys know me, I'm crazy. This is the kind of stuff that when I'm falling asleep, I think about. Most people think about like normal things. I'm thinking about this kind of stuff, So, I don't have a brilliant answer for that. And I've talked to a lot of coaches, and believe it or not, they don't have brilliant answers for that either, because you see the game has changed to some degree. Think of it this way. Every quarterback is a system quarterback. That is not a negative term. You know why? Because that's the way the game is taught. Every coach has a system. That's how they teach it. I mean, PK, you know this. I mean, you've been doing this a really long time. You've been around. That's the way the position is taught. It's taught within structure. No coach rolls the ball out and says, let's run around today. There's a structure to all this. So what happens in today's NFL when defenses have become more sophisticated, more detailed, more nuanced, more pressure packages, more 5 DBs, 6 DBs, sometimes 7 DBs? What happens when the defense tactically defeats the structure? If the quarterback has nothing to do at that point, the play's over. So, certainly Zach Wilson can move. He can make a lot of different kinds of throws. By the way, Chad, the throw he made, there's 30 guys who could have done that. That was so overblown. That was just, one of those things that everybody got excited about. There's 30 guys that could have done that. But he's a guy that tends to be, and he's not Mahomes, but he's Mahomes in this sense. There was a recklessness to his tape at times, a looseness to his tape, an undisciplined nature to his tape. And there was absolutely that with Mahomes coming out of Texas Tech, which is why he was the 10th player chosen and not the first or second player chosen. How that plays out in the NFL is very difficult to truly predict.
Greg Cosell with us on OutKick 360, and you can catch the new podcast, The Cosell Files, which debuts on Thursday afternoon at OutKick.com and wherever you download your podcast. Greg, let's move to wide receiver in Jamar Chase, who appears to be the best wide receiver available in this class. And we didn't even see him play last season. And you say, hey, no big deal. I watched him play in 2019. That's all I need to see. In fact, you compare him, you see, maybe comparison's a bad word to use, but you see some DeAndre Hopkins in his game. That's high expectation for what you see at LSU.
Yeah, I also see some Steve Smith in his game because this guy's an alpha dog. He's a type A personality. He's super competitive, super tough. He's proactively aggressive. He embraces the physical nature of the game. Watch him get off press coverage. I mean, he doesn't do it with what you'd call nuance. He does it just with strength and physicality. I loved his tape, I think he can do everything. I think, look, what does the NFL game in many ways become nowadays? It's become a game where there's a lot of short throws. We see a lot of RPOs. Everybody's doing RPOs. Everybody's doing what they call illusion RPOs, where it looks like an RPO, but it's not quite. So that means for receivers that you're getting a lot of slant routes. You're getting a lot of what are called glance routes, which is a slant route is normally you break on your third step. A glance route you normally break on your fifth step. So, but they're quick inbreakers. He's a master at those kinds of routes, and he's physical run after catch. And that's what the NFL game has become in many ways. And he can get on top of people. You know, it's funny, when you watched his tape, you didn't come away saying he was a burner, but he got on top of big-time SEC corners. And then he had a great pro day, which I think the pro day means something in this regard. He did not play, so then you know that he worked his tail off to have a great pro day, and I think that says something positive.
Greg, let's stick with the receiver position. Elijah Moore is a guy I loved watching at Ole Miss. Very, very productive. But am I being too old school NFL that I'm concerned with that 5'9" height with a receiver like Elijah Moore?
Chad, I don't think so, because I think that's another way the NFL game has changed. I think now the game has changed where there's a lot of smaller receivers, and there's a ton in this draft, but the game has changed to where those players are kind of used as movement receivers. You hear the phrase manufactured touches, scheme touches. I think a lot of teams are doing that now. The question is, are these receivers volume receivers? Are they going to get 120 targets, or are they going to be, guys who maybe catch 40, 45 balls? I loved Elijah Moore's tape. I thought that he was quick. I thought he had separation quickness. I thought he had vertical burst and speed, really good hands. I thought he was really tough and competitive at the catch point. He played through contact extremely well. I thought he was competitive run after catch. I mean, yeah, is he a slot receiver to begin with? If you're going to give him a designation at 5'9.5", 178, is he a slot? Yes. But I think you can do more with him if you have some creativity, as more and more coaches and teams now have.
Let's flip to the defensive side, Greg. I'm curious about Christian Barmore. I've read some stuff that may be dedication and responsibility concerns. I'm wondering if that shows up on the tape at all for him. And we're in our Tennessee hour, so I can ask how he might fit in if the Titans wanted to go that direction with Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, PK. I mean, it's very hard for me watching tape, and I won't talk about this unless it's blatant, and it's not blatant with him, about a guy's effort level. But I will say this. I would say that there were times he came off the ball a little high and he lost leverage and power. Keep in mind he was used as a rotational player in college, and so the question is, what is he in the NFL as far as number of snaps? That's a legitimate question to ask. The other part of that, though, is college games, teams tend to run far more plays offensively than NFL teams, so more guys are rotational players. I think this guy's really talented. He's over 6'4", he's 310, he's got really long arms. To be honest with you, you know who he reminded me of? Chris Jones coming out of Mississippi State. Keep in mind, Chris Jones was a second-round pick. We know now he's a great NFL player with the Chiefs, but he was a second-round pick. Barmore, to me, is a guy, and this is the way he was used at Alabama, who's multi-positional. So in a league now where there's more multiple front looks, Barmore fits that. So he's got really good traits. I think he's a really good prospect. I can't speak to his character. I can't speak to, whether, he's not going to play hard all the time. I can't speak to that, and I won't. But he's got really, really good traits.
Greg Cosell with us from NFL Films on OutKick 360. Greg, Kwity Paye at Michigan played all 4 years. 38 games is where you can find film on him. How many fronts can he play in? How versatile can he be up front? And did you see considerable improvement year to year over the 4 years he was at Michigan?
Yeah, he only played 4 games this last year, unfortunately. But I watched him last summer. I watched about, 6 games last summer from his 2019 season. I like Kwity Paye. I think you have to understand what he is. First of all, he's ideally not what you want lengthwise at the DN position. And he's a DN. I don't believe he's an outside linebacker, but that's me. Maybe others disagree. He's only 6'2.5", so he's not long. He's got a very compact and dense frame, but he is a very good athlete for that frame. In fact, when he was in high school in Rhode Island, he was a member of a 4x100 relay team. So he can run a little bit, as evidenced by the fact that he ran a 4.57 40. So whatever that means, it does mean he can run pretty fast for that body type. I think that he's got really good strength. I think he's a plus athlete. I wouldn't call him explosive, although at times he flashed some explosive movement. I think there's much to unlock with this kid, both athletically and physically. I think there's a lot there. It would not surprise me if teams saw him as an inside rusher when they go to their sub fronts. I'm just not sure if he'd be an outside rusher in sub, which of course teams play at a reasonably high percentage now, at least 60%, usually more of their snaps. So he's a relentlessly powerful guy. There's kind of a methodical explosiveness to him, not a twitchy, sudden explosiveness, more of a methodical explosiveness to him.
Is Jalen Phillips also your prototypical 4-3 end?
Oh, yeah, Jalen Phillips. And again, I mean, he's got the injury issues. I think he had his first concussion when he was 10 years old. We know he quit football for a year, came back and played this year. He's to me, your quintessential 4-3 DN. Like the teams like Minnesota. I would say Philly is like that now because they're going to play the Minnesota defense with their new coordinator. Over 6'5", 260. This guy's got everything. I mean, I spoke to a GM that I know well, and we both agreed that if he was a totally clean player, he'd be a top 10 pick. He's got size, he's got length, he's got athleticism, he's got suddenness, he's explosive, he's flexible, he can bend, he's got power, really good balance, he competes. He checks all the athletic and physical boxes to play DN in a 4-3. That's what he is.
Jason Oweh's pro day at Penn State blew people away.
Yeah.
What does the film match the hype from that one glance that many got from him? Because it doesn't jump on the stat sheet till you have to watch Penn State week in and week out. So you've seen the snaps, you've seen the effort, you've seen the athleticism and the ceiling and how he can build on his game. What do you think of him?
I think he's a freak. I think that the stats are not that relevant to me. I mean, he did have pressures. He only played 5 games this year, so you have to be a little careful about using 5 games to say, he didn't have a sack, so that scares you. I know it'll scare some. This guy's athletic and movement traits just jump off the tape. I mean, this guy's he's a freak. He's 6'5", 257. Say what you want about pro day measurables. We know they have pro days for a reason, but this kid's pro day numbers were like a running back. I think that few edge prospects move the way he moves. This kid's twitchy. He can bend. He's got burst. He can change direction. Everybody looks at sacks guys, but he made plays in the run game that were ridiculous. This guy he's got unbelievable flexibility. I mean, this guy is a loose-limbed athlete, and he's got a really loose core. He can change direction really easily.
Well, and his ability to track down quarterbacks and running backs on the opposite side of the field is uncanny. And just watching the limited snapshot we've seen of him.
Oh, no question. I mean, I again, people can get into and they can debate the sack numbers because that's what obviously people look at. And I don't know Jason Owe, so I can't speak to any of that. But the traits are so high level that, you know, whoever takes him and where he gets taken, which I can never speak to that stuff. But this kid is D-line coaches will want to work with this kid. And by the way, you could theoretically see him as an outside linebacker because, you know, he has that kind of movement. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 257. You know, if you're a base 3-4 team, you know, again, you're not going to play in your base more than 30% of your snaps. But I wouldn't be surprised if some teams, I mean, a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could easily see this guy as an outside linebacker in their base 3-4.
I know Tevin Jenkins is probably 30 pounds heavier than 30 pounds lighter, than Isaiah Wilson was coming out. What I hear about him, though, is that his playing style is what Wilson's was supposed to be, kind of a brute of a right tackle. Is he a similar player coming out, and can we anticipate him being kind of what Wilson was supposed to be?
Well, you know, it's funny. He's this kid's big kid. I think what he is more than anything is he's physical, he's aggressive, he's competitive, he's a really good run blocker with really strong finishing traits. At times he's a little nasty, which, by the way, NFL line coaches will love that. I mean, I think he's an attitude guy. You know, he's an attitude guy as a run blocker. He's the kind of guy that sets a physical tempo for an offensive line. That's always in demand. I think pass protection is where he needs his work. My guess is some will see him as a guard, but then you get into that debate. You got to line up with 64 offensive tackles every week. You know, not everybody has sweet feet and looks great. I mean, there's a lot of tackles who play well in this league, and, you know, given team scheme, all that comes into play. But this kid's really a physically competitive kid. He's a good prospect.
Greg Cosell with NFL Films is our guest. He'll join us weekly on Wednesdays right here on OutKick 360. You can hear him with Jonathan Hutton on a new podcast as part of the OutKick Network, dropping every Thursday as well. Greg, let's stay on the offensive line. And Trey Smith from Tennessee. You mentioned with Jalen Phillips that if the medicals were completely clean, he would be the top pass rusher in this draft. How much higher is Trey Smith on a draft board if he doesn't have the medical issues in his past?
You know, I watched his tape in pretty good detail. I think he's a good, not great prospect. He's a physical power mauler. He's not a finesse athletic player. That's okay. He's a guard. You don't have to have sweet feet and be a dancing bear. The strength of his game is run blocking. I think that he transitions to a team whose offensive philosophy features a strong run game. I think he probably fits best in a gap scheme run game. I'm not sure he's a zone guy. I mean, he could block inside zone. He's a limited athlete, and that showed up at times in pass protection. That's a concern because the ball's thrown a lot in the NFL. I think the bottom line with Smith is that he's a big, strong, aggressive offensive guard with a competitive mauling mentality. O-line coaches will love him. They'll feel good about coaching him in the areas in which he needs work. Look, you don't have to be a high-level athlete to be an offensive guard, and Smith, to me, in the right scheme, could well be an important piece of a strong offensive line. But I don't think he's a great prospect where you go, oh, my God, this guy's just, awesome.
Greg, which position group is the deepest based on your evaluation? Deep meaning you have a lot of guys that you really love, despite the ratings and rankings and mock drafts. We're not getting into that. Just where can you find a plethora of playmakers?
Wide receiver. I mean, there's a ton of wide receivers. And look, it's a passing league. You need wide receivers. So wide receiver is really a pretty deep class. And, here's what happens with wide receivers is there's very few transcendent guys. I think Jamar Chase is somewhat transcendent. Jalen Waddle is really intriguing. But there's not going to be 20 wide receivers you just watch tape and go, wow, they're great. So wide receivers end up being used in different ways and playing to their skill sets. But I think there's a lot of really good wide receivers in this draft that are going to play in the league.
You didn't mention Devontae Smith. He's of course, you can't mention everyone, but you mentioned Waddle and not Smith.
Well, Smith, Smith's fascinating. Smith came in at 166.
Yes, that's where I was headed. That's where I was headed. What do you think of that?
Now, again, there's always, you can always say, oh, well, look at Deshaun Jackson, look at this guy, you can always do that. That's easy to say. I guarantee, and again, Smith might go in the top 10. He's got unbelievable receiving traits, high level receiving traits. But I guarantee in meetings leading up to the draft that teams are discussing the fact that he's 166. Because at 166, he's an exception. And that demands discussion. It doesn't mean you say, oh, doesn't have great traits. Yes, he does. But it demands discussion. And then it also demands deployment. The question becomes, how is he utilized in your offense? I think when all's said and done, he's got to be a movement Z. A Z is the receiver that lines up off the ball, so he's not on the line of scrimmage. I think you have to use him in motion. I think you have to get him in a situation where he has free access off the ball and can stride out. Because what he is at his core, putting aside the nuance of his game, which is really good, by the way, but putting that aside, he's a long, thin, smooth, linear strider. That's what he is. You want him to be able to stride. And if he can stride out, then his traits and attributes come to the forefront.
Greg, I was telling Paul and Chad earlier today about the Cosell files, which will debut tomorrow. They are pumped. They're like, oh, we cannot wait for this to take place each and every Thursday. And I know this is something that you and I have been talking about now it's been longer than a couple of months. It goes back a few years. But we're anxious to get this going. And I want to preface this on the show. Greg's visits with us on the show and the podcast, we're not going to get into mock drafts and who Greg thinks the Cincinnati Bengals will take at pick number 5. Are they going offensive tackle or wide receiver? But what we can get into is what it tells us about the direction of a franchise or the options that Shanahan has at quarterback at number 3 and how that will steer the direction of their offense moving forward based on the style and the skill set of the quarterback selected, because teams have options, Greg, and as you like to say, they will tell us what they're thinking by the moves they're making and maybe more importantly, who they pass up on.
Well, the other thing too, Jonathan, and again, this is just who I am. I love the process, and we can start talking about that. I mean, I love the process of evaluating. That's what I do. That to me is the fun part of it, particularly when I put on tape of a guy who is kind of virgin to me, that like a great example of that was the linebacker from Kentucky who I loved his tape, Jamin Davis. I love that guy on tape. I have no idea where he'll get drafted. I think he'll be a really good pro, but I love the process of sitting here, hey, here's my clicker, it's right in my hand right now. I love the process of just watching tape, evaluating players. And the key thing is you're trying to project and transition them to the NFL. That's the whole point of this. And, there's very few transcendent players. So much depends on team, scheme, coaching. There's so many variables that go beyond just, oh, wow, he's going to be great. Or, he's this. And there's so many factors.
File 1 will debut tomorrow across the OutKick network. We will make sure that our viewers, that everyone across the network knows how to get their hands on this, how to download this on the device. Greg, tonight, NFL matchup, correct? Give us the time again.
9:00 tonight on ESPN2. Matt Bowen, myself, Sal Palantonio. 9:00 tonight. Yeah, we shot it today. And, again, our mandate on that show is to put players in the context of the NFL. We don't just say, oh, here are the top 5 receivers. Here are the top 5 this. We talk about the players that we end up talking about. Look, we only have 21 minutes in a show. We can't talk about 50 players. But the way we talk about it is in the context of the present and evolving NFL game.
We're always smarter when Greg Cosell joins us to talk all things NFL. Greg, thank you as always. We look forward to next week right here on OutKick 360.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Greg Cosell of NFL Films making his debut there. Gives us 30 minutes every Wednesday. We backed it up because of the taping that he was discussing there with ESPN. He will join us weekly starting next Wednesday, every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central, and we go commercial free right up to the hour.
I got to go back, Chad. Your question was good, but I couldn't keep up with it. I was trying to tweet it. His question about can a guy be a top, his answer, can a guy be a top-level quarterback if he can't do something, if the defense has a solution for a play? What did you think of what he said there? What was his answer?
Let's get into that, because a lot of it comes from this special I watched on ESPN with Kirk Herbstreit and Zach Wilson, and how they were gushing over this throw at his pro day that he made, and it was basically just, it was done to show that he can throw off platform. You know, where his feet aren't set, where something happens where you're not in the spot you should be in, and you could throw at different angles. I think
we've talked about this.
Greg's answer was great.
That's a mandatory thing now.
But also how he said that NFL coaches don't have a great, brilliant answer for it either. It's good that they can do that, but the top value in a quarterback is still ability to throw accurately from the pocket and make good decisions.
Yeah, but I've asked this question, like, do you have to be able to do more than that now in order to be a top 12 quarterback anymore? I think the answer leans towards yes.
We'll discuss more of that straight ahead on OutKick 360. Hang with us.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Really excited to finally have some in-person OutKick VIP events. We're at 6th and Peabody, Old Smoky Yeehaw Brewery. Awesome day, great questions, good to shake everybody's hand. It's just good to be able to get out and see everybody.
We love to meet with the people that make us possible as a show, the people that tune in, the people that watch, the people that listen.
A lot of these VIPs interact with us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and now we get a chance to come out and hang out, watch games, and interact with them the same way we would interact with the three of us on a daily basis. It's awesome.
If you're at a VIP event, you're going to hear more about the inside jokes, stuff that goes on behind the scenes. You can ask us anything. We want to be with listeners and viewers as much as possible, so we're thrilled.
Looking forward to doing a lot more of these VIP events as we continue to grow.
It's an incredible experience. I would advise everyone out there, if you're a fan of OutKick or OutKick 360, to sign up and be a VIP.
It is the Tennessee Power Hour for OutKick 360. Alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Koharski, I'm Jonathan Hutton. Speaking of Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, the orange and white game. This Saturday, we will be in Knoxville. Us, Clay Travis, Old City Sports Bar, starting at noon Eastern, leading up to the orange and white game on Saturday. A big OutKick event. We hope you'll join us. We're looking forward to this, Chad.
Yeah, you can see it right now where we're very pale and Clay's very tan. And maybe we'll be that way on Saturday, too. Who knows? I know Clay's been going to the beach, so maybe he's more tan. This Saturday, noon to 3:30 Eastern, Old City Sports Bar. If you're in Knoxville, if you're in the area, if you're headed to Knoxville this weekend, come by and say hello. Should be a great time. And Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery and Greenbrier Tennessee Whiskey will be sponsoring the event. Some good food and drink specials, maybe even a free drink or two for OutKick VIPs. Yet another incentive to join the OutKick VIP program. You saw the promo during that last break. So come hang out with us on Saturday. Going to be a big time.
Paul, you brought up the question that Chad asked to Cosell about being able to make the off-the-script play when the defense takes away your top option. I think that's difficult to find on film from the elite quarterbacks at certain levels of college football. Trey Lance may be a great example this year where, I mean, the critics will say, well, he's a one-read guy. One read, pull down the football and run. Well, he does do that, but he also makes incredible plays when he chooses to do that at the level he's playing.
Well, I'm not talking about having to do it now. I'm talking about projecting to do it.
Yeah, coached into taking the talent that you have and projecting that he becomes the player that is worthy of a top 10 pick.
Yeah, and we hit on a lot of things. He hit on at least two things there about the evolving NFL. That, which I think we've hit on a couple times here, you know, particularly if you're taking a quarterback, one of these top 5 quarterbacks, and he's going in the top 12, say, I think you need a guy now, you know, and I brought this up a few weeks ago, the idea of a statue anymore is less and less desirable. You want the guy to be able to operate in the pocket, but you're less and less satisfied with the guy who's going to take a sack in the old traditional way, like where if the play burns itself out, he's either throwing it away or taking a sack. And then the other thing about these receivers, the smaller guys, Smith, but even more, who you have to be really creative with, you know, and they might not be volume guys, but if you're smart enough on offense, you can do a lot of things with him, and he can really be an X factor on your offense. But he's not probably the kind of guy that you just line up and send out on routes 70%, 75, 80% of the time on offense like you would with more traditional receivers.
As a part of the off-schedule, off-script discussion, my answer initially is I want a quarterback that's extremely accurate, and I want a quarterback that recognizes that the defense took away the option.
Yeah.
That is more important
Figured out the play.
than can he figure out a second option, because can he live to fight another play and give your offense another down?
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't realize that the defensive coordinator took it away,
then it's a pick or a turnover.
you're screwed.
Yep.
Yeah, get out of the tackle box, throw it away, live for another day. I'm completely fine with that. I agree with you. Accuracy and decision-making, at least on the level you're talking about, to start with.
Yes.
Then grow from there. But most of the plays that we see that wind up being crucial plays in crucial games don't go according to plan. You know, and that's always the case. There's something that goes wrong that the quarterback is going to have to make up for to some degree. Can your guy ultimately do that? Not year one, but you know, we've seen Josh Allen grow into it. Mm-hmm. Can your guy grow into it like Josh Allen's grown into it? Whether he has Josh Allen's physical characteristics or a completely different set, because Josh Allen's a unique body type and has, you know, he's the big, strong Roethlisberger
The
type.
traits.
Yeah. And your guy can have completely different traits. But can he get there? You know, and that's a tough projection to make. That's why it's hard.
Well, I think the word that Greg used was reckless. You know, he said there's a reason Patrick Mahomes was drafted 10th and not first in the draft is because Zach Wilson has some similar traits when you turn on the film, that he's a little reckless at times with how he's moving around the pocket and what he's trying to do. So there were some similarities there. No one's complaining about that with Patrick Mahomes. And is that something that's now a prereq for a quarterback in the NFL? I don't think it's to that point yet.
A little bit more.
But it's
more.
It's getting to where that is something that's definitely desired by NFL
You
teams.
used to hate it,
Yeah.
right? Oh my God, this guy's got a reckless thing in him. We have to get him in and tamp that down.
How about his comments on Trevor Lawrence?
Not as I thought it was interesting with Greg. Not as big on Trevor Lawrence as everyone else is.
But still a separation.
Not a generational talent.
Right.
He said there's still a separation, but he's not, the greatest prospect in the last 10 years or anything like that. Devontae Smith, lots of concerns about his weight, 166 pounds.
66.
And that was, there's been a lot of talk about Trey Smith that he may be a late first rounder if it wasn't for the medical issues.
Not big on
and
him.
he said no. He said he's a good guard, powerful brute guy, but not a great athlete. And he doesn't see him he's a good but not great prospect.
That's the different opinion on there for sure. And maybe higher on Jenkins, Paul.
Listen, he said about Jenkins exactly what John Robinson will love about Jenkins,
Yep.
which scares me to death about Jenkins, right?
Right tackle,
John
here we
Robinson
go.
wants that guy at right tackle, aggressive run blocker with nasty finishing traits, an attitude guy, sets a physical tempo, needs work on pass protection. Some will see him as a guard. Not everybody has sweet feet. He's a good prospect. Titans are fine without sweet feet at right tackle. Jack Conklin didn't have sweet feet. He was an all-pro. Right? This guy sounds like a John Robinson guy to me. A lot of people talk about him just like that.
John Robinson's looking around saying, hold on, did someone say brute? I'm in. Someone said brute. If I even catch a whiff of brute cologne, I'm going to be interested in this prospect. That's exactly what he wants, is a big brute. The only thing he needed now is a great laugh. And this guy's as good as the 22nd overall pick.
Jolly like Santa Claus. Listen, if I'm a Titans fan, I would advise you, I still don't think they'd go there. But the real safe play is for the Colts to take him at 21. And the Colts need tackles.
Yes.
Well, they need a left tackle probably more
Yeah.
than a right tackle, though, and this guy's not a left tackle. So
They're not going to draft him. It's not going to happen. I refuse to believe it. They're not taking a right tackle in the first round. It's not going to happen. I've said it on this show, and it will be so. It's not going to happen.
Stop saying it so much.
It's not going to happen.
Chad nearly
More you
destroyed
say.
his home office last year
time.
on the Friday after the draft in regards to the right tackle being selected, not knowing what was to come, but just said, "Hey."
Oh, I knew. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't know.
No, I'm not talking about Isaiah Wilson. I'm saying the rest of the draft. You're saying right tackle. You're going to destroy this laptop live on the show on
I think
Friday.
it's sometimes
He said
silly.
he feels the urge to destroy something, but he doesn't follow through.
Okay, that's fair.
Sometimes, just like the good fan versus bad fan. Sometimes it's silly for fans to take this. Well, the Titans are bad at drafting receivers, so they can't possibly draft a receiver
you
this
keep
draft.
trying.
That's ridiculous. You keep trying, but I will say that Isaiah Wilson pick was so damn bad and worked out so pitifully for the Titans. I'm totally okay with taking a 1-year respite from drafting any offensive tackle in this draft because it was so bad. This is my one exception to this rule. It's okay to take a year off at offensive tackle because of the bad taste left in the mouth.
Take
it
because
at
of Isaiah
100
Wilson
or after. You're
and
allowed
his
to
jolly
find one.
laugh.
I see. I disagree. I don't think it's okay to take a year off from drafting tackle because they screwed up the pick so poorly last year that they've set themselves back on a pick.
Yeah, I agree with
They
Hutton,
need another tackle.
but you're allowed to take him at 100 or later. He doesn't have to be given your other needs.
Give me Lamb.
But he's saying,
Give me Lamb at right tackle. If he's done with it, we can worry about it again next year.
Give
He's
me
a huge
Lamb.
Lamb fan for that reason. I'm a huge Lamb fan because he's a
You
great
know I'm
quote.
a big Lamb fan because he's been in the league. Like he's actually played. He's participated in football for a team. I mean, I just don't. Just none. Not at any point in the draft. Don't do it.
I don't look. I feel the pain on this because I understand the frustration with the pick, but in looking at their roster,
One injury.
it has to be addressed because they screwed up the pick so bad.
Well,
Such a horrible outcome for what they decided to do last April, to what they are now forced to do and address this preseason, this offseason.
I'm comfortable with what they have now. But
For what?
You pointed it out. If they get hurt, they're screwed.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with Lewan and Lamb. If they suffer an injury, they're screwed. And they can't do what they did last year. A, they don't have Jonnu Smith to be the primary helper. And B, it just was limiting. I mean, it was remarkable that they were able to be as good on offense as they were playing a second and third string left tackle. And you just can't put yourself in that hole again. So I do think that they need a better look. Quisenberry, as well as he did, needs to be knocked off the roster by better depth, and you need to have Lawan, Lamb, Sambrilo, and a draft pick who's better than Quisenberry. I think upgrading the depth, right? Upgrading the 4-pack of tackles, but that guy doesn't have to be one of the top 3 picks to me, given all your other needs.
I mean, again, they could do better than Lamb. The Browns like Lamb so much they went out and gave $100 million to Jack Conklin.
Guys, I've been researching this. I'm hearing it's a great undrafted free agent market for tackles this year. This is going to be a great pool of undrafted free agent tackles. Bring in some depth. Might hit on one of these guys. Could be the next starter on the offensive line that went undrafted. This is the year to do that.
You can always go back.
This is the year for that, I'm telling you.
Marcus Mariota's best friend there. He was a guard. What was his name? He's somewhere floating around. The guy that went to Oregon with him.
Oh, yeah, he was on and off the roster.
A charity case.
We've seen those come through.
Blaine
for
Bishop
sure.
asked him a great question about Marcus, a great question when he got cut.
His roommate. Yeah. Coming up, we wrap up the show, give some final thoughts, and we talk alphas. Greg mentioned the word alpha. Do they exist for players in Knoxville right now? Discussion
Chad
next
will
on
give
OutKick
us his
360.
list.
No.
Wait.
OutKick 360 back with a date to give you more dates. 3 weeks from tonight, the NFL schedule will be released. May 12th.
It's a big night.
I almost got chocolate-covered dates on my way back from something yesterday, but I avoided it.
There's a lot of meatloaf talk during the break.
Yeah.
Meatloaf, and I had meatloaf for dinner last night also, so it was a perfect
Jim
time.
Steinman, the mind behind Meatloaf, passed away. May he rest in peace. Hronis Grasu was the friend of Marcus Mariota,
Yes.
like we couldn't remember.
Grasu.
He was a charity case as far as I was concerned. Didn't see him around much after they were done with Marcus.
Chad, there is an alpha mantle in Knoxville, and that mantle right now, not many players' numbers or jerseys or names, likenesses would be staking claim to that mantle currently, both football and basketball.
Put some people up on
Who will lead?
It's open.
Who will lead? Who will set the standard? Who will be the alpha? Who will be the driving force of the football and basketball team in Knoxville with Tennessee? It was Juwan Jennings a couple years ago, there's no doubt about it. Daniel Batuli, another one of those guys. Trey Smith was kind of that guy, but he's a little bit more of a quiet leader. Nigel Warrior was that guy. When Tennessee had success and won 8 games, it was because of veteran guys like that. I don't know who that is on this current Tennessee roster. The guys that stayed aren't the most vocal of guys. Now, there is a vacuum there where someone could take off and be a vocal leader of this team and be that guy for Tennessee. Maybe it's Cade Mays, who's now in his second year transferring over from Georgia. He's got that type of mentality. Maybe it's his younger brother, Cooper Mays, honestly. Maybe it's the Mays brothers that are the alphas of this team. But outside of some offensive linemen and some veteran defensive linemen, I don't see a lot of candidates, honestly, that have been there long enough, that have done enough, that will step into that role and help Tennessee surprise some people in a good way this year. There's just not that many guys. And on the basketball end, I think it's got to be Josiah Jordan-James. I think he's the guy that towards the end of the year started to step up and take a more vocal role with that team. It's not going to be John Fulkerson. People love John Fulkerson. He's not that type of guy, and I don't think he's that type of player. I think Josiah Jordan-James is the type of player that can hold everyone else accountable with the way he plays. When Tennessee had their most success, they were led by Admiral Schofield. Alpha. An alpha amongst alphas. Lamonte Turner, even off the bench, alpha. Grant Williams, alpha. Those guys led. They got in teammates' faces. They would get in each other's face during a game if things weren't going the way they wanted it to go. I think both Tennessee football and basketball needs a little bit more
Do
of
we
that.
think that Heupel will be the kind of coach who will ask players to step forward into this role and take on this mantle? In addition to player development, leader development, which I don't know that we saw much of from previous regimes.
Paul, I really don't know much about Heupel's leadership style yet. I know about him as an offensive coordinator. I think he's a very, very good offensive coordinator. I think he's a good offensive mind. I think he's going to help Tennessee tremendously on offense. But what you hear about Heupel now is, snow cones and food trucks. Like, he's just much more accessible to players and that let's have fun. His whole thing is, we need an infusion of fun. We want players excited to come to practice and compete and do this. And we're going to have food trucks out there. If you go hard this day, we're going to have the Kona Ice truck come in and do a little bit more of that, which is definitely a different approach from that business. Jeremy Pruitt treated it like a job to the players. Like, it was very much a business NFL approach of, I'm not going to sit here and motivate you. If you want to get to the next level, you want to do things to win, you want to become a better player, here's how we're going to structure practice. I think that Josh Heupel has much more of a focus on fun. It could be good, it could be bad. I honestly don't know enough about his leadership style to know if that's something he's going to be a driving force behind of cultivating leaders on the roster.
I think you could take that fun thing to a cheesy level, but I think Pruitt seemed to suck it all out. So I don't have a problem with Heupel putting something back in there.
I think you have to have it if you're going to have success. It's not the only thing that's going to dictate success,
Needs to be
but it is a prerequisite factor on a team that you have strong player leadership and you have guys who will light a teammate up. I think that is absolutely necessary.
And as is the fun. You got to put something in there.
Today was fun. Hope you enjoyed Greg Cosell's debut on the show. He joins us weekly every Wednesday at 12:35 Eastern. You can catch him on the podcast, replay of the show, whether that's through podcast, wherever you download your podcast, but also YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. Hit us up in the meantime at OutKick360 and join us tomorrow. John McClain's on the show tomorrow.
John,
Hit the
I'm back,
NFL
baby.
draft headlines with the general.
Anything except Deshaun.
I've been turning down interviews left and right because I don't want to talk anymore about Deshaun and his masseuses.
If McClain were here right now, Paul, you would give him this advice.
Don't reveal your band name. Don't lock the box. And do lock the locks.